The Nevada desert stretches endlessly under a moonless sky, where the only light comes from the headlights of Jack Sullivan's rig, Old Betsy. As a seasoned trucker, Jack's no stranger to long, lonely nights on these desolate roads. But tonight, the silence feels alive watching him. When his GPS flickers, placing him in a non-existent dry lake, and his radio crackles with a woman's desperate whisper, "You shouldn't be here," Jack's routine haul turns into a nightmare. A robed figure with a glowing lantern appears in the middle of the road, vanishing only to reappear closer, its eyeless gaze boring into him. As hundreds of lanterns form a sinister circle in the desert, Jack realizes he's not just driving through the Nevada night. He's trespassing in a realm that demands a price. Will he escape the Shadow Keeper's grasp, or become another lost soul claimed by the desert's ancient curse? My name is Jack Sullivan, a 42-year-old truck driver who's been hauling cargo across America for nearly 2 decades. That night, I was driving my rig through the Nevada desert, a route I knew like the back of my hand. The endless stretch of road, flanked by sand and rock, was nothing new. The sky was pitch black, no moon in sight, with only my headlights cutting through the darkness. I usually found the desert's silence calming, but tonight felt different. There was a heaviness in the air, a bad feeling I couldn't shake. I turned on the CB radio to catch some chatter, but all I got was static. My truck, Old Betsy, swayed slightly as the desert wind picked up. I sighed, figuring it'd be another long night. But deep down, something told me I was being watched from the dark. The air inside the cab grew colder, even though I'd turned off the AC. I rubbed my hands together, trying to focus on the road. Then my GPS started acting up, flickering and showing my location in the middle of a dry lake I'd never seen on any map. I chalked it up to a signal glitch, common out here. But the screen kept flashing, then went blank before displaying strange symbols I didn't recognize. I tapped the device, hoping it was just a malfunction. Outside, the wind howled louder, carrying what sounded like faint whispers from afar. I squinted, scanning the road ahead, but saw nothing but darkness. A knot of unease tightened in my chest, like something was wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint what. Suddenly, my headlights caught something in the distance about 300 yards ahead. A figure stood in the middle of the road, unmoving like a statue. I slowed the truck, thinking it might be a lost hiker, though that seemed unlikely with no settlements for miles. As I got closer, I saw it was wearing a tattered robe, its face hidden under a hood. In its hand was an old lantern, glowing with a pale yellow light that flickered like a dying flame. I blared the horn, hoping they'd move, but the figure didn't budge. My heart started pounding and the hairs on my neck stood up. I rolled down the window and shouted, "Hey, get off the road!" My voice seemed to vanish into the desert silence. The figure abruptly snuffed out the lantern, and in an instant, it was gone. I rubbed my eyes, wondering if I was too tired or seeing things. I flicked on the cab's interior light to calm myself, but my hands shook as I gripped the wheel. Then the CB radio crackled to life on its own, blasting static. From the noise came a faint whisper, a woman's voice speaking in a language I didn't understand, like an ancient chant. I quickly shut it off, but seconds later, it turned back on. This time, the voice was clearer, speaking in English with a desperate tone. "You shouldn't be here." I froze, my heart nearly stopping. I glanced at the side mirror, and there, behind my truck, the robed figure stood under the glow of my taillights. Its face was still hidden, but I felt its gaze piercing through me. I slammed on the gas, Old Betsy roaring as I sped away. But in the mirror, the figure stayed there, as if gliding over the sand, keeping pace with my truck at an impossible speed. I tried to stay calm, telling myself it was just my imagination, but the radio's whisper kept echoing, "It knows you're here." I switched it off again, but the voice seemed to come from outside the cab now, mingling with the wind. I looked at the window, and for a moment, I saw a pale, eyeless face pressed against the glass, its empty socket staring. I screamed, nearly losing control of the truck. I pushed the pedal harder, hoping to reach the next small town on my route. But the road seemed endless, with no sign of civilization. In the distance, I saw small lights flickering like campfires in the desert. I thought they might signal a town or rest stop, but as I got closer, I realized they weren't ordinary lights. Hundreds of lanterns, like the one the figure held, floated in the air, forming a perfect circle in the darkness. I shivered, feeling an unnatural chill envelop the cab. Then my truck died, headlights out, engine silent, and a terrifying stillness took over. I sat in the cab, my breath ragged, hearing footsteps crunching in the sand, closing in from all directions. I locked the doors, though I knew it wouldn't help. At the side window, a face pressed against the glass. A pale, eyeless face, its mouth moving to repeat the radio's words. "You shouldn't be here." I shut my eyes, praying it was a nightmare. When I opened them, my truck was parked on the edge of a small town, the engine running normally, and the morning sun rising. But on the dashboard was an old, rusted lantern, stained with dried blood on its handle. I never took that route again, but every night, I hear that whisper in my head. Months passed since that night, but I couldn't forget it. I quit driving for a while, taking a job at a garage to clear my head. Bills piled up though, and I had to get back on the road. Tonight, I was assigned the same Nevada route. I told myself the last incident was just exhaustion playing tricks on me. Old Betsy was fixed up, with a new GPS and a brand new CB radio. I packed an extra flashlight and even a bottle of holy water I got from a priest in town. I'm not religious, but I wasn't taking chances. The sky was dark again, and the desert felt emptier than usual. I turned on the radio for some country music, hoping it would keep the fear at bay. Less than an hour in, the radio started cutting out. The music faded, replaced by the same static from that night. I shut it off, but my heart was already racing. I kept my eyes on the road, but the headlights seemed to dim, making it harder to see. The GPS flickered again, showing me in that same dry lake. I cursed, smacking the device, but it now displayed strange, looping symbols. The cab grew freezing, despite the closed windows. I checked the side mirror, and my blood ran cold. The robed figure was back, standing at the road's edge, holding that same lantern. I floored the gas, trying to outrun it, but the figure appeared at every turn, always at the roadside, staring with its hidden face. I tried calling base on the CB, but the woman's voice came through again, more urgent. "You're back? It's waiting for you?" I yanked the radio's power cord, but the voice echoed in my head. In the distance, the circle of lanterns appeared again, larger this time, floating higher. I tried veering off the road, but it felt like the path looped, leading me back to the circle. The truck started losing power, the headlights flickering, and the engine let out a strange groan. I stopped the truck, unsure what to do. I grabbed the flashlight and holy water, considering getting out to face whatever it was. But before I could open the door, the window creaked like something was scratching it from outside. I shone the flashlight, and in the sand were footprints, erratic, like they weren't made by a human. I heard soft tapping at the door, and the woman's voice whispered from inside the cab, "Open the door, Jack." I screamed, splashing holy water at the door, but the tapping grew louder. I started the truck, and somehow the engine roared back to life. I sped away, but the circle of lanterns seemed to follow, always ahead. In the mirror, the robed figure was now in the truck's flatbed, its lantern glowing brightly. I didn't dare look back, focusing only on the road. Then the truck died again, all lights out. In the darkness, I heard heavy footsteps on the cab's roof, slow but deliberate, like something massive was up there. I shut my eyes, praying, and when I opened them, I was at a gas station, the morning sun shining. But on the passenger seat was another lantern, identical to the first, with fresh blood on its handle. I started questioning my sanity. 2 incidents on the same route couldn't be coincidence. I saw a doctor, thinking maybe stress or sleep deprivation was causing hallucinations. He said I was fine but suggested I stop driving at night. I couldn't, trucking was my life. I hit the local library, digging into Nevada's folklore. I found stories about the Desert Keeper, an ancient entity that punished those who disturbed sacred ground. I laughed it off, but deep down I couldn't deny what I'd experienced. I tried taking different routes, but the company forced me back to Nevada. Tonight, I packed a small cross and some trinkets from a souvenir shop, hoping they'd be enough. The drive started quietly, but I couldn't shake the dread. I kept checking the mirrors, praying I'd see nothing. An hour past midnight, the headlights caught not one but several robed figures at the roadside, each holding a lantern. I tried ignoring them, but they started moving, walking alongside the road, keeping pace with my truck. I turned on the radio for comfort, but it was just static and that voice again, "You belong to it now." I shut it off, but the words rang in my ears. In the mirror, the figures were now in the flatbed, standing in a row, staring at me. I sped up, but the truck felt sluggish. The speedometer read 80 miles per hour, but the scenery didn't change, just desert and those figures. In the distance, the circle of lanterns appeared, but now there was something in the center. A massive figure, taller than any man, its robe billowing like smoke. I screamed, trying to swerve, but the steering wheel locked. The truck barreled toward the circle, and a bone-chilling cold filled the cab. The giant figure raised its hand, and the lanterns flared brighter, blinding me. I closed my eyes, shouting, and when I opened them, the truck was stopped on the roadside. The figures were gone, but the circle of lanterns lingered in the distance, like it was waiting. I tried starting the truck, but the engine wouldn't turn over. I heard tapping from under the truck like something crawling beneath. I grabbed the cross and flashlight, but my hands shook too much to open the door. Outside, the sand began to swirl, forming small vortexes around the truck. I saw shadows in the sand, like hands reaching up from the ground. I finally mustered the courage to step out, clutching the cross. But as my feet hit the sand, something cold grabbed my ankle like an icy hand. I screamed, yanking my leg free, and scrambled back into the cab. I locked the door, praying with a trembling voice. Suddenly, everything went silent. The truck's lights came back on and the engine started. I drove without looking back, but in the mirror, the circle of lanterns glowed as if calling me. When I reached town, I found something under the seat, another lantern with strange carvings that felt alive to the touch. I couldn't keep going like this. I needed answers. I called an old friend, Mike, who knew about weird stories in Nevada. He mentioned rumors of ancient rituals tied to the desert, linked to native tribes who believed it was a gateway to another world, guarded by the Shadow Keeper. I didn't want to believe it, but Mike suggested meeting a local shaman who might know more. I brought the lanterns I'd found, hoping for an explanation. That night, I drove to a small camp on the desert's edge where the shaman lived. I felt watched the whole way, but the mirrors showed nothing. The shaman, an old woman named Naya, paled when she saw the lanterns. She said they were markers used by the Shadow Keeper to claim those who crossed sacred boundaries. She warned that I'd been chosen, and the Keeper wouldn't stop until I returned to the circle. I tried to laugh, but my voice shook. Naya gave me a charm made of stone and feathers, saying it might protect me temporarily. She also told me to never return to that route no matter what. I left with mixed feelings, the charm heavy in my pocket. But the company assigned me to Nevada again and I had no choice. That night, I started the drive with the charm in hand. I tried staying calm, but the dread returned. The CB radio turned on by itself and the woman's voice called my name. Jack, it's waiting for you in the circle. I shut it off, but the voice echoed. In the mirror, the robed figure was in the flatbed again, closer now, almost touching the rear window. I screamed, throwing the charm at the glass, but the figure vanished, only to reappear at the roadside. The circle of lanterns loomed ahead, and this time, I saw the giant figure clearly, its eyes glowing red under its hood. The figure wasn't human. Its robe moved like smoke, and its eyes burned like coals. I tried swerving, but the wheel locked again. The truck hurtled toward the circle, and a freezing cold made my breath fog. I clutched the charm, praying, and the truck suddenly stopped. The robed figures surrounded me, their lanterns blazing. I heard tapping from all sides, and the windows began to crack. I screamed, closing my eyes, and when I opened them, I was at a gas station, the charm charred in my hand. I felt like a rat in a trap. Every attempt to avoid that route pulled me back. I stopped sleeping well, haunted by dreams of the lantern circle and the giant figure. I begged my boss for a different route, but he laughed, calling me dramatic. I considered quitting, but I had no savings to fall back on. Tonight, I was back in the desert, feeling this might be my last run. I brought a knife, a flashlight, and a new charm from Naya, hoping they'd suffice. I also rigged a small camera in the cab, thinking I could record proof I wasn't crazy. The drive started calm, but soon the GPS glitched, showing those strange looping symbols again. The radio turned on and the woman's voice sounded angry. "You can't run, Jack." I unplugged it, but the voice lingered. In the mirror, the robed figure held two lanterns now, one in each hand. I tried speeding up, but the truck slowed on its own. The circle of lanterns appeared, and a low chant vibrated through my bones. I stopped the truck, considering running, but where to? The desert was endless. I turned on the camera, hoping to capture something. But the screen showed only static and the chanting grew louder. Outside, the robed figures surrounded the truck, their lanterns forming a perfect circle. The giant figure raised its hand, and the sand swirled into a massive vortex. The truck lifted slightly, pulled by an unseen force. I screamed, gripping the knife, but my hands shook uncontrollably. Then everything stopped. The lanterns went out and the figures vanished. I heard soft laughter, like a child mixed with a groan. I shone the flashlight, but its beam couldn't pierce the darkness outside. I checked the camera and the screen showed my face, but not as I knew it. My eyes were empty like the figures that night. I dropped the camera and the truck started again. I drove as fast as I could, but on the dashboard was another lantern with the same carvings as before. I knew I couldn't keep running, but I didn't know how to fight. I was losing it. I went back to Naya, bringing all the lanterns. She looked terrified, saying the Shadow Keeper had bound me with them. She told me to burn the lanterns in the desert, at the circle's location, as part of a cleansing ritual. I doubted it but had no other options. I rented a different truck, not wanting to risk old Betsy. I loaded the lanterns, fuel, and a new charm, determined to end this. That night, I drove to the desert, searching for the circle's spot. The wind howled, carrying what sounded like distant cries. I stopped at what I thought was the circle's center, piled the lanterns, doused them with fuel, and lit the fire. The flames roared, but the smoke formed eerie shapes, like screaming faces. I stepped back, holding the charm, but the ground shook. The robed figures appeared, their lanterns glowing again. The woman's voice screamed, "You can't break the bond." I ran to the truck, but the door was locked from the outside. I pounded on it, but tapping answered from inside. I turned, and the giant figure stood behind me, its red eyes glowing. I threw the charm at it, but it vanished and the fire died out. The sand began covering the truck's tires, like the desert wanted to swallow me. I forced the door open and drove away, but in the mirror, the circle of lanterns still glowed, mocking me. When I reached town, the lanterns were back in the flatbed, untouched by the fire. I went to Naya's, but her house was empty, like no one had lived there. I was losing hope. Every attempt to escape dragged me deeper. I stopped driving, staying in a cheap motel, but dreams of the circle haunted me. I started seeing the robed figure outside my window, standing under streetlights, holding its lantern. Each night it got closer. I sought help from a pastor I'd heard on the radio, Pastor John. He listened to my story and said this might be more than a spirit, something evil tied to the desert since ancient times. I took Pastor John to the desert, hoping he could perform an exorcism. We reached the circle's spot, and he began praying loudly, holding a large cross. But the wind whipped up and sand formed a vortex around us. The robed figures appeared, their lanterns blazing. Pastor John kept praying, but his voice was drowned by their low chant. The giant figure appeared, its red eyes glowing, and spoke in a voice that shook the ground, "You belong to the desert now." I pulled Pastor John toward the truck, but he fell, choking on living sand. Hands from nowhere dragged him under, and he vanished. I ran to the truck, driving as the giant figure walked behind, shaking the earth. I reached town, but I knew Pastor John was gone. At the motel, I found another lantern under my bed with my name carved into it. I knew I couldn't run anymore. The Shadow Keeper wouldn't let me go. I decided to face it, returning to the desert one last time. I brought the lanterns, a knife, and a notebook where I'd written everything, hoping someone would find it if I didn't make it. I drove to the circle's spot, the sky darker than ever, the air heavy like before a storm. I stopped, stepped out, and stood in the road, holding the first lantern I'd found. The robed figures appeared, more than ever, surrounding me with their glowing lanterns. The chanting filled the air. The giant figure emerged, its smoky robe billowing, its eyes like burning coals. I shouted, "What do you want from me?" Its voice shook my bones, "Blood for the desert, a soul for the keeper." I raised the knife, ready to fight, but the ground sank, pulling me down. I threw the lantern at the figure, and it shattered, unleashing a blinding yellow light. I heard screams, not theirs but from within me. I felt something tear at my soul, but I stood my ground, refusing to give in. The lanterns went out, and the figures vanished. I collapsed in the sand, gasping. When I woke, the sun was up and I was alive. But my hand bore a circular burn mark, and the lanterns were gone. I returned to town, but I wasn't the same. I sold old Betsy, quit trucking, and moved to a small town outside Nevada. The dreams of the circle and the giant figure persisted. The burn mark on my hand never faded, and sometimes I felt watched in the dark. I kept the notebook, hoping someone would believe me. I heard other drivers talk about strange lights or whispers on the Nevada route, but I never shared my story, fearing they'd think I was crazy. One night, an old driver approached me at a bar, holding a lantern like mine. He said he'd seen the circle too, and that the Shadow Keeper never truly leaves. He told me to stay away from the desert or I'd be pulled back. I nodded, but I knew I couldn't escape forever. Tonight, I sit in my motel room writing the last of this story. I heard a soft knock at the door, but no one was there. On the floor was another lantern with fresh blood on its handle. I know what it means. The Shadow Keeper isn't done with me. I'm going back to the desert, not to fight, but to end this. I'm bringing this notebook, hoping someone finds it and understands. If you're reading this, stay off the Nevada route. Don't follow the lanterns and don't listen to the whispers. I'm standing in the desert now at the circle's spot. The lanterns glow in the distance, calling me. The giant figure waits. I don't know what's next, but I'm ready. The lantern in my hand feels hot, alive. I step toward the circle, the chanting growing louder. If this is the end, at least I'm facing it with my eyes open. The desert belongs to the Shadow Keeper, and I'm just an uninvited guest. If you love this chilling tale, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell, so you never miss our dark, spine-tingling horror stories from every corner of the globe.